This video will cover most of the commonly asked questions for completing the Wordpower project in Illustrator. So the assumption is that you've done your sketches and now you have one or more of those that you're ready to give a try in Illustrator. Since most solutions can be boiled down to replacement, meaning replacing one letter in the word with something else or manipulating that letter, we'll cover ways to do that in Illustrator. You want to remember all the rules and the instructions for the project. You know, only black ink, no gradients. So it would probably be a good time before you jump into this to read the instructions one more time and go over the grading rubric. The other assumption is that you've watched all the assigned videos for Illustrator. And if you need a refresher of how to find those, you can just go to the Prof. Steve G. WordPress.com site and go to Illustrator under Software Help, and then the most important one for this project will be working with text. So if you haven't viewed that yet, you probably want to pause and view all the videos under working with text. Then you want to go ahead and open up Illustrator. Make sure you know what size your artboard should be set to. Go to File, New, and dial in the size of the artboard. For this demonstration, I'm going to assume that you were assigned an 11 by 11 inch artboard for the project. You want to click on More Settings down here, and I believe that shows, yeah, regardless, should be towards the bottom option. And actually, before you go into that, you just want to, again, make sure that you have 11 by 11 for the width and the height or whatever was assigned to you. Artboards, you want 2 or more. You know, if you want 4 right away, just go ahead and set it to 4. And then under More Settings, I think the default in this program for how close the artboards are together is way too small. So I always set this for at least 2 inches, and that would be a requirement for the project no matter which class you're in. And then you can just go ahead and click on Create Document, and then you probably have to click Create here again. Nope, it looks like it figured that out on its own. And now you have your 2 artboards and a good bit of distance between them. First thing I'll do is show you one of the solutions from the examples, and together we'll build that in Illustrator, and hopefully it'll bring up a lot of concerns and questions and things that you should be looking into as you do this. I'm a fictitious student. This is one of the solutions that I came up with when I was sketching, and now I want to try to create that in the program. So font selection is a big deal in here. Sometimes you are searching for just the right shape of a letter so that your manipulation works on it. So like if you were doing the lame example I gave of flower, you would probably want a letter O that is very symmetrical, that looks like a circle. If you were doing balloon, you might have to replace the whole letter with a balloon, but maybe you can find an O that already looks very much like a balloon, because again, the less you do to the letter, the better. The more, you know, you stick to the original forms of the letter and just make a slight manipulation. That's how you win the hearts of graphic designers. Sometimes you'll be searching for the negative space inside of a letter to do your solution. And nothing kills a great solution better than some grungy garage font, because you have to remember that every font that you use has a meaning to it. And when we talked about concept, remember we said that concept, you come up with the idea, and then every other aspect of graphic design contributes to that. So if you're using a font that has a ton of personality to it, people are going to be looking for some meaning there. So if I picked some crazy font to do this that was all like distressed and eaten away at, people might gloss by this while they're looking for meaning in the font. So generally, when you have a really good solution, you want the font to really stay out of the way or contribute to it. So in this case, I don't want a font that's going to draw a lot of attention to it, because as we talked about, I thought this was a brilliant solution. So let me just type out the word. Well, actually, I should show you this, because as you saw in those other videos, there's multiple ways to create type. But for this project, for the most part, we just want the simple click and type away, which is called point text. And then I'm going to need to get the size a lot bigger on this so I can beef it up there. And then the other way to do this is to, and for positioning, you can just click and drag. But for scaling, hold down the Shift key, because you can still horrifically stretch fonts in this program. Hold down the Shift key, click and drag on the corner, release the mouse, then release the Shift key. That way you know that you didn't stretch it. And while we're on the subject, never stretch a font. Never squish, never stretch a font. If it's not the width that you're after for that particular thing, then you go out and you find a wider or a narrower font, because otherwise you are just destroying the integrity of the font. Sometimes you might do what I just did and not realize that you squished the font. So let me just give you a quick reminder of how you figure that out. So in the Properties panel, click on the dots here after the Character panel, which will automatically show up when you have text selected, and you just want to make sure that the percentages right here and here both say 100, not something other than 100. See how that one changed? So I would reset that. You may have to outline your font, or at least part of it, to do the change that you want to make. But always keep a copy before you do that, and avoid outlining any more than you need to, because eventually when you're finished with this project, you are going to be required to turn in 2 artboards, one with the solution in your original font, and then another one over here where the font is selected and outlined. And if you've already outlined it, that doesn't make any sense. And I'm just trying to get you into the habit of not outlining your fonts until the very last minute, because if you want to change something and it's no longer a font, then you can't make that change. You can't correct spelling and so on. So let's just see, without outlining, with keeping this as a single line of type, if we can make that change to the K. So knowing some of the things that we learned in the other video, we can probably do that. So we have over here the rotation. So if we change the rotation, no, that's not the way I want it. Maybe like that. There we go. And well, we're talking about font selection. Is this the best choice of a font? It's the default. Which, oops, I went too far there. I want that at 90%. So let's just pick another font. So we're going to go here. Let's just take a classic font like Garamond or Castellon, whichever one we come to first. Adobe Castellon. Okay, so let's use that. So now twisting that made it jump up. So then we could go in and we could take the baseline and adjust that. Yeah, baseline shift. So I'll swipe my mouse in here and hit negative numbers for that. And we can see it's too far away, so we know we would have to adjust the kerning for that. And keep going back to this panel is kind of a pain, because we have to keep clicking those dots. So we might want to go just to Window, go to Type, and bring out the character panel on its own, which is just going to be so much friendlier to work with. We'll go here, we'll go to Show Options, and then we've got all of them, and they're just going to sit there while we're working on it. So now we put our cursor between, we go to the kerning, we swipe across there, and then we start giving that a negative value until we bring it in. Now, as you're doing this, you're going to want to assess, is this looking right? And the first thing I think is, well, two things. One, with these serifs, it's really not helping things at all, because if I want to show fall down drunk, I want them like flat against the sidewalk, basically, not with these serifs in the way. So a sans serif font might make a lot better choice here. And actually, now that I'm looking at this, the only thing I changed when I changed the font was the K. So there's another thing you got to be careful of, is watch your selection. I must have had it like this when I switched to Castellan, not like that. So now I'll go select the granddaddy of plain generic fonts, which is Helvetica. But again, you're just going to spend some time looking through, finding a font that is perfect for yours. Actually, you know what? Since it came up here, I'll get Futura because it is a fairly plain font. Actually, no, I'm going to go with Frutiger. Okay, there we go. So plain font, not bad. The only thing is, I like the idea of the K being that way. So now what do? That's probably a change that I am not going to be able to make with these tools, keeping this as a connected font. So what I'm going to do is, rather than doing a whole bunch of Command Z's, is I'll just retype out the word, and I know I'll have to play with the K. Now there is a huge benefit to never getting rid of any letter here. I would swipe across the K and I'm going to make it invisible, which, pause and see if you can figure out how I would do that. The secret is just change it to white because that's the color of the background. Now what I'm going to do is make a new layer, but at any time I want to bring this back to see the original forms. I've got them there. And super easy to do, right? I would just click on here to select everything on that layer and then go over here to the color, the fill color, click black, and it's all back to normal. Okay, so I put this back to where it was, then I'm just going to add a layer to my panel. Maybe never hurts to double click on these layers and let this little thing pop open, and you just double click on whatever word's there. So if it's generically labeled layer 2, double click, put a K there so I know that this is the whole word and this is just the K that I'm working on. So now what I'm going to do is I want the exact same size K, and I always think that you're better off to copy something that you have from before rather than trying to recreate. So I'm just going to swipe across here, select this D, go Command C to copy. Now I'm going to select away from the D. I'll grab the selection tool, click here, then I'll go back to the type tool. I'll click away from the word and I will Command V to paste. Then I'll wipe across here again. I'll make the K. So now I know that it's the same size, the same font, because I did a copy and a paste. Now that I'm done with this word, I'll go ahead and I'll lock the layer, and then I can start manipulating the K. And I think I can do this. Oops, it looks like I have the K on the wrong layer. So let me select that, grab this little dot that represents the selection, move it up to the proper layer, and now lock this layer. I believe I can do everything that I want to do here still without outlining this. So now what I'm going to do is move the font to the corner. You can see I get that. I'll hold down the Shift key, put it on its back. Now the only thing to get it to look like my drawing that I'd have to do is flip it around. And there's a couple different ways you can do that stuff. I usually like to use the Tools panel, but you can also go up to the menu and you can go to Object and you can go to just look at the different options here, like Transform, and then you see Reflect, and then you would dial in the numbers you want for Reflect, or you can just go to right here where the Rotate is, hold down your mouse, grab the Reflect tool, and then click and drag on this, and if you hold down the Shift key, it'll constrain the proportions. Release the mouse, release the Shift key, and then all that is left is just to move this around, and since it's independent, I can grab it with the mouse and move it around. Sometimes for fine tuning, it's nice just to grab this and use the mouse to move it up and down, but you can see right now my mouse is set for movements that aren't real fine. So to change that, I can go up to Illustrator and Preferences, and if you're on a PC, that's probably Edit Preferences, but either way, once you get to Preferences, you can either click on it now or you can take my word that that's under General, and you go to keyboard increments, and what I usually do is just add a 0